It started out just as a trip. There were 4 of us. Me, Sarah, Kenny, and Tyler. We were all packed into Kenny's rattling old Jeep and headed off into the mountains for the 4th of July weekend. No real set plans. It was all just an excuse to see each other again after too many years of group chats and missed calls. Kenny had a map dotted with weird roadside attractions, a 2-headed calf, a diner shaped like a cowboy boot, and an old town called Boomtown that claimed to have the best fireworks in the country. Boomtown didn't even sound real, more like a name someone made up for a cartoon than an actual place. But there it was, circled in faded ink on an old atlas Kenny dug out of his grandfather's garage, and just above it, scribbled in shaky handwriting, were the words, "America's Best Fireworks Show." It felt like a joke, a forgotten roadside relic, or a dead town with a flashy name. But something about it stuck. The absurdity, the promise of spectacle. And so we went. The turnoff from the main road was easy to miss, just a warped wooded sign, no cell signal. Trees loomed over us, and then suddenly it opened up to open fields and Boomtown. It was pristine. White picket fences, hand-painted storefronts, kids playing with hula hoops and sparklers. People waved as we drove in, real waves, smiling like they were on parade floats. Everyone looked like they stepped out of a 1960s TV commercial. Shift dresses, paperboy caps, crisp red, white and blue. The Jeep felt too modern just being there. We parked near a general store and stepped out onto the pavement. The air smelled like cinnamon and charcoal, and a tall man in a blue suit and red bow tie approached us, his smile stiff and unwavering. Sitting on his head was an American flag top hat, similar to the one worn by Uncle Sam. "You're just in time," he said. "The celebration's about to begin." "The fireworks?" Kenny asked. The man chuckled. "We do more than that here." The town was very welcoming. They gave us pie, lemonade, sodas in glass bottles. The buildings were spotless. Every window gleamed. A marching band warmed up in the distance. Sarah whispered this is like a movie set, and Tyler nodded and chuckled. "Feels like if we don't play along, something terrible would happen," he joked. I laughed at that, but there was a truth to it. Everyone we met stared, just a second too long. Their smiles held attention, like stretched skin over something waiting to snap. Still, the nostalgia was comforting. It felt like a version of America that only existed in old VHS tapes and diner murals. We let ourselves enjoy it. We wanted to. By dusk, the townspeople began drifting towards a wide field behind the church. Rows of folding chairs stretched out in perfect lines. Children handed out tiny American flags. A woman in a star-spangled dress passed by us with a basket of fresh-baked cookies. "You're visitors of honor," she said. We all smiled at her, and then found a spot to settle in. Tyler left to get more drinks for us all, and as he walked away, the mayor stepped onto the stage and began to speak. "Tonight," he said, "we renew our promise, our celebration of freedom, of sacrifice, of eternal service." His voice had cadence to it, measured and rhythmic, like a chant. Sarah leaned towards me. "Did he say eternal service?" The band began to play, the same off-key march from earlier. The townspeople all clapped. No one looked at us anymore. Their smiles had gone glassy. And then came the parade. Floats rolled by, carried not by trucks, but pulled by men. Barefoot men, with blank stares in their eyes, and ropes tied around their wrists, cutting circulation, and their bodies covered in cuts. The floats were crude. Mannequins dressed as soldiers, nurses, children waving flags. Behind them was a platform carried by a waxy Uncle Sam figure with glowing eyes. Kenny muttered, "What the fuck is wrong with this town?" Then the fireworks started. Thunder cracked in the sky, in red, white and blue. The crowd roared with applause. And beneath it, if you listen close enough, screams. And they sounded human. No one reacted. They all kept clapping, smiling, laughing. I turned to Sarah, but she was already standing, her face white, her face pale. "We need to find Tyler," she said. Well, Sarah and I went to go find Tyler. Kenny went to go to the Jeep. We slipped between rows of chairs, moving fast, but careful enough not to draw any attention. As the next firework burst, more screaming, louder now, closer. We ran back towards the church. Ducking behind a shed as a pair of men in old military uniforms dragged something through the dirt. It was Tyler. His face was swollen, bloody, his mouth stuffed with cloth, his eyes wide with terror. His shirt was ripped and cuts covered his body. They were taking him to the back of the diner. We followed close behind, not trying to catch their attention. We saw a huge hole behind the diner, a pit lit up by torches, surrounded by two figures in red robes. One of the men spoke, their voice flat. The sacrifice completes the circle. Sarah grabbed my arm. We waited, and the men in old military uniforms left. And that's when we ran in. I lunged at one of the figures in the red cloak, grabbing him by the throat and slamming him against the side of the diner. His skull cracked against the brick wall with a wet, splintering thud. Beside me, Sarah let out a guttural scream and shoved the second man hard, right into the pit. His scream echoed for far too long, before it ended in a brutal, bone-snapping crunch. The hole was deep, so deep, the darkness inside seemed to swallow light itself. Sarah dropped to her knees beside Tyler and tore off a blood-soaked gag from his mouth. He came away dripping in blood, thick and glistening. His jaw trembled, and his tongue was missing. Just a mangled, oozing stump remained where it used to be. He moaned, a horrible, helpless sound. And then a siren wailed through Boomtown. Streetlights exploded to life, flickering like strobes. The ground began to tremble. At first we thought it was an earthquake, until we heard it, chanting, low, but growing louder by the second. It was the townspeople, all at once coming towards us. Every last one of them started to move, and fast. They poured out of houses and shops in perfect unison, their movements jerky and fast. It was unnatural. Their eyes wide, mouths hanging open in frozen grins. They sprinted at us like puppets with their strings yanked tight. We dragged Tyler as fast as we could. He was heavy, bleeding badly, leaving a slick trail of blood behind us. He couldn't even scream. He could barely even moan. The townspeople swarmed the street behind us like ants, descending from porches and shops, eyes blank, mouths wide open. Their screams echoed through the town louder and louder. They weren't people anymore. Sarah tripped, but I pulled her back up, and Tyler fell behind. He tried signaling us to leave, his hands trembling. We couldn't. We ended up reaching the Jeep. Kenny was already inside, curled up in the driver's seat, sobbing uncontrollably. His hands were clamped to the wheel, knuckles white. He hadn't even tried to start the engine. We screamed at him to drive. The townspeople were coming in closer, but nothing. He just sat there, shaking and crying. I tore open the driver's side door and yanked him out of the seat and threw myself behind the steering wheel. Sarah climbed in next to me, with Tyler laying in the back seat. We begged him to get back in, but he didn't. He just stood there on the sidewalk, tears falling down his face. He was frozen in shock. The townspeople fell onto Kenny like a pack of wolves. Their hands clawed at him. Their teeth sank into his flesh. One of them drove a rusted flagpole straight into his chest. He didn't even scream. Just blood bubbling at his lips. They ripped him apart. Limbs torn from sockets. The street ran red, pooling under their feet. His head was the last to go, held high like a trophy before they dropped it to the gutter. I locked the doors. I didn't wait. I couldn't look any longer. The tires squealed as I slammed the Jeep into drive and tore down the street, swerving around the townspeople. As we drove out of the town, we looked back, but the townspeople didn't chase. They just stood there, in a perfect line at the edge of Boomtown, waving, still smiling, blood dripping from their hands and soaking their clothes. And behind them in the sky, fireworks bloomed, red, white, and blue. It looked beautiful. Eventually we made it to a gas station, just as the sun broke over the horizon. Bloodied, half-conscious and barely able to speak, the clerk took one look at us and didn't ask questions. They handed us towels, water, and let us use the phone to call for help. When I told them what happened, what town we just escaped from, they paused. Boomtown? They repeated. You mean the old fairgrounds? I shook my head no. It's a whole town, full of people that tried to kill us. But they frowned deeper. It was a boomtown, yeah, they replied. It burned down back in 1965. A firework accident. It destroyed the whole town. wiped out everyone. There was no survivors. I just stared at them. I mean, they meant it. They believed it. But as far as anyone knew, Boomtown was just a name on a map, with a tragic headline buried in history. But I knew better. Eventually an ambulance arrived. Tyler was rushed to a hospital. He was barely clinging to life. He survived, physically, but he'll never be able to speak again. And it wasn't just his tongue they took. Something deeper was torn out of him that night. We gave the police the exact location. We filed the reports, and they sent a search team. But nothing came from it. No town, no buildings, just a forest and wide fields of silence, as if the place had never existed. But I remember the smell of smoke and cinnamon. I remember the way they looked at us. I remember the clapping and the screams buried beneath every burst of the fireworks in the sky. None of us have been the same since. We don't meet up anymore. We don't try to call. Just seeing or thinking of each other just brings it all back. And Kenny, I still see his face sometimes. Not the screaming, not the end. Just him, just frozen, on the sidewalk, crying, while we begged him to get in the car. I mean, I was the one that pulled him out of it. I tell myself I killed him, but it was the only way. Because if I didn't do that, we'd all still be in Boomtown.